Hey everyone, welcome to my third of 3 videos on the Canon EOS 60D. In the first video we talked about what everything was, in the second we talked about how to do everything except for the menu button right here. So in this video we're going to talk about everything in the menu. If you are looking for a specific function, there are going to be 3 different groups of menu items. Red we're going to call shooting, blue playback, and yellow setup. There are links in the video's description to take you right there. The custom functions will each have their own specific link in the video description. We're going to cover them at the end of the video, okay? To navigate the menu, the first thing you want to do, we'll exit out of it, and now we can hit the menu button and that will bring us to the menu. If we use the rear command wheel here, this will allow us to scroll down through the menu items, and if we push the set button, we can select one and then use the rear command wheel to pick the different options, okay? So we're going to start right here in the shooting menu, and we're going to start with the quality option. So here you have RAW, and then a bunch of different JPEG options. Large size, which is full sensor, medium is a down sample, small is a greater down sample, and then the smooth ship sail here indicates a maximum amount of resolution retention. The steps here indicate compression, which will lose image quality. At the time that this camera came out, the maximum size CF card it could take would have been spendy. A 2 GB CF card would have been in the $60 to $80 range, I think. So a lot of people would have picked up the 128 megabyte ones, and it would have made sense to use a smaller JPEG for that because those cards couldn't hold many RAW files. Today you can pick up a 2 GB CF card for a couple of dollars, maybe 10 at most if you're paying for shipping. They're not expensive. So it's worth just shooting RAW and having the most image retention data that you have. If you're here getting this camera to become a better photographer, shooting RAW will give you a lot of ability to edit. Also, RAW files now in Windows versions 10, 11, and I would assume anyone in the future as well, will display a thumbnail in your file view. Back in the day when this came out, they did not. They only displayed a generic icon. So shooting JPEG allowed for thumbnail viewing of photos as well. But today in the world, and I gotta imagine this will be the case going forward, shooting RAW is going to give you the most you can get out of this camera. Next up, red eye on or off. Those are your 2 options. This is your flash control, red eye reduction. With off, your flash will not pulse red eye. With on, it will. And what I mean by pulsing for red eye, prior to triggering the flash for the exposure, it will pulse, boop, 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 like that. And that will cause the pupils of your human subjects to shrink, and it will reduce the red eye the appearance of red eye in your photos. This is useful if you're using the on-camera flash or a hot shoe flash pointed directly at your subjects for your photography. Off will not trigger that pulse. So if you use your pop-up flash, for instance, you will get red eye. One thing that with off, however, if you're doing a studio setup and you have off-camera lighting, strobes, snoots, umbrellas, softboxes, things like that, you don't want to use red eye reduction because you won't get red eye from that flash setup if you've done it correctly, and having that pulsing can be really annoying. So this is a matter of what type of flash setup you're going to be using, off camera or on camera. That's a really good way to remember it as well. AEB is auto exposure bracketing, and this way, what you can do is, I know it's kind of hard to see from the screen damage here, but as I rotate the wheel, you can see these dots underneath the exposure scale. Auto exposure bracketing will take a series of 3 photos. 1 stop under, properly exposed, 1 stop over. So darker, normal, brighter. You can think of it that way. Up to 2 stops apart. Much darker, much normal, much brighter. So this is a good way to take multiple photos if you don't know your exact settings, or you want to do an HDR photo or something like that, okay? There's another really good use for this. Let's say that you're shooting aperture priority, program, shutter priority, something like that. You're at a beach or you're skiing with your friends or whatever, and you're just like, man, all my photos are way, way, way too bright. I don't know what my actual settings should be. We're going to select auto exposure bracketing. We're going to come down here to the LCD screen, and on the LCD screen you can see under, proper, over. Well, now I'm going to hit the asterisk button, and you can see under, or way under, proper. So if I know my photos are starting off too bright and I need them to be darker, but I don't know how much, I can exposure shift my brackets so that I get darker, darker, normal, instead of darker, normal, brighter. So if or the opposite is true. If all my photos are turning out too dark, I can force this over to the bright side. What you can do with auto exposure bracketing is do the exposure shift, so you still get your normal exposure, but you can get darker images only or brighter images only if you want to do that. Coming back to this, now I'll turn off auto exposure bracketing. There we go, off. Next up is ISO speed. This is where you select your camera's sensitivity. 100 up to 1600, nope, 100 up to 1000, that's it. This is what you got right here. So this camera is from, what did I say, 2000, it's more than 20 years old at this point. The algorithms that back up the sensor sensitivity adjustments, the sensor itself, that's all super old technology. Even when these came out, they weren't great at higher speeds. With a camera of this age, 200 is about as far as I would push it and expect to get really good results. 400 you might be able to get away with in some settings. 800 and 1000, you're looking at converting to black and white with these because of the amount of digital noise and the number of weird color artifacts you're going to get. So if you're going to go really fast, just think of that for black and white. For somebody shooting for like a newsprint, a newspaper for newsprint publication back in the day, these would have been just fine. Convert it to black and white, and the digital noise would have been no issue with newsprint. But if you're out shooting in full sun or something, you want to just keep it at 100. Next one is LCD illumination, on or off. And what this does is this is with the set button. So if I set this to on, menu out of here, and you might be able to see, I know that's really blurry, I don't want to shift focus again, but you might be able to see the LCD is illuminated. So with this option, if you set it to on, the set button will illuminate the LCD, but we're gonna, I think this camera has the custom function that assigns another task to the set button, and I believe for this to work, that custom function, if it's in this camera, has to be set to no function. So this is a matter of personal preference and how you want your camera to work. Next up is beep off or on. On means the camera will beep when it obtains focus, can't obtain focus, things like that. This is a matter of where you're at. If you're at like a library or a piano recital for your kid, you probably want to leave it off. If you're out at a sporting event and you just want to hear something to let you know when your camera's ready, it's probably going to be loud enough you can leave it on. By and large, though, this selection comes down to how you want your camera to communicate with you. This next one is called custom white balance. When I hit OK, it goes to no CF card. If you remember from the second video when I talked about using a custom white balance for a tabletop or studio setting, this is where you do that, okay? You would take a photo of a white backdrop with the lighting that you're going to use for your photo shoot, and then you'd come in here to custom white balance, you'd assign that photo to your custom white balance, and then the camera would calculate the settings needed to make what it's taking a photo of white. And then you could use that custom white balance across your entire photo shoot to ensure that all of your colors were balanced the same way, and that your editing, when you get all your raw files back onto your computer, goes a whole lot more smoothly. Next up, and this should be our last shooting menu item, is parameters. Standard, set 1, 2, 3, and setup. Okay, so sets are preset groups of parameters that you have already set up. Standard is the default. Setup allows you to come into here and create and adjust your sets 1, 2, and 3. And you can do things like adjust the contrast, sharpness, saturation, and color toning. So if you wanted to shoot black and white, for some reason, shoot high ISO black and white, come in here and adjust your saturation down to 0. All right, that's going to be black and white or close to it. Then shoot high ISO. So this allows you to create custom color toning sets for your images that you can use for your photography. Now, that said, in general, just leave this to standard. And the reason is because if you're here to become a better photographer, this refrain you've probably heard me say a lot in this video, you're probably going to want to shoot raw. With raw editing, you can do all of this stuff in here, but way better. This software is more than 2 decades old as I record this video. If you were to just download GIMP for free, if you bought Affinity, the photo editor, which is very affordable and very capable, everything you can do in here, you can do way better in those softwares and you can do even more than that. So just shooting raw and doing your post-processing on your computer is going to give you way better results and way more control over how your photos turn out than anything your camera can do. So just leave that to standard and then do your editing in post. Jumping into the playback menu, Protect allows you to protect if you have a CF card with images on it, which we don't have right now, allows you to protect individual folders, individual photos, groups of photos, and I think also folders so they aren't deleted by accident. Rotate allows you to manually rotate an image on your screen. So let's say that you're looking at your screen here, okay, and you take a landscape orientation photo where the bottom of the photo is along the bottom here, and then it would take up the entire screen. If you take a portrait orientation photo, the bottom of the photo would be on the tall side of the screen. The person's head would be over here, right? So it would be sideways, and you'd have to hold the camera sideways to see it. If you select rotate, you can manually rotate that camera for playback, and then you get some letterboxing on the side. Just a matter of personal preference and how you want your photos to display. Print order. If you connect your camera directly to a printer, something I've honestly never done in my life, you can specify the print order of your photos. This is, again, you can do this if you have a printer you want to print directly from your camera. But if you're here to become a better photographer, edit your raw photos, clean them up, remove the dust spots, make them look how you want to, and then print those. Or print your JPEG files after you've edited the RAWs. Auto playback, this is going to start a slideshow of all the photos on your CF card. Now we're into the setup menu. And so the setup menu starts here with auto power off. So I have this set to 30 minutes, but here are your options: 1, 2, 4, 8, 15, 30, and minutes and off. This is a matter of battery preservation. Most of the time when for this camera, I would pick 4 minutes. I like 5 minutes for my cameras. It's just, what this does is after you do something, how long does the camera wait for you to do something else before automatically turning itself off? If you leave this to off, your camera will deep discharge and ruin your batteries. So I recommend not going with off unless you have an AC adapter plugged into it. I use 30 minutes because it's really annoying making these videos to have the camera shut off every minute or two if I'm trying to talk about something. But generally speaking, for cameras I'm going to be using for taking photos, I would pick 4 or 5 minutes. But this is totally a matter of personal preference and how much battery protection you want to give yourself when you're taking photos with this camera. Review, off, on, or on and hold. Review has to do with, do you want your photos to display immediately after you take them? Take a picture. With off, your LCD will remain dark. With on, your picture will display, and we'll see in review time for how long it displays. And with on hold, it will display until you tell it to go away. This is by and large a matter of battery preservation. If you leave this to off, your screen will remain off more often, and then your battery will last longer. Also kind of a matter of learning to make yourself be a better photographer. You can always manually play back an image, but if you have a habit of always looking at the photo after it's taken to see how it turned out, you're never going to let yourself make mistakes, and mistakes will teach you how to be a better photographer. I would suggest, if you're here to be a better photographer, leave this to off. Double check with the playback button when you need to if there's a critical photo you absolutely want to make sure looks good, and then don't check your photos until you get home. Learning from making a mistake will make you a better photographer, I promise. If you were to set that to on, however, this is the amount of time that it would be on afterwards: 2, 4, 8 seconds, or hold. Weird that they have on, hold, and hold down here. Oh, these old camera menus were just always kind of feel like they were just kind of thrown together and nobody knew what they were supposed to do yet. So at any rate, if you had review on, here's where you would select how long it stays on for. LCD brightness is bright or standard. Okay, so you might see there it just kind of got a little bit darker and now a little bit brighter. Standard's going to be good for most people. Brighter will drain your battery a lot faster, but it's really much better for making videos on YouTube where you're showing the screen the whole time. At any rate, this really comes down to what type of environment you're shooting in. Bright would be better for full sun. Standard would be better indoors or something like that. Also, how much battery you want your LCD to use. Date and time, you can come in here and set up the date and time as well as format on your camera. File numbering is continuous or auto reset. So file numbering will start at 0001 and go through 9999. Auto reset will automatically reset the file numbering at certain times. I can't tell you what all the parameters are because I don't know them, but my guess is new folder, new CF card possibly. My advice on this is leave it on continuous. The reason is because you get with a 2 gig CF card, you get, what did we say, 830-ish raw files. If you have the number starting over every time you put a new CF card in, and you have, say, 2,400 photos from a trip, you're going to come home and you're going to find that you have 3,001 photos. They could overwrite each other. It will take you a very, very long time to get to the point where you risk overwriting photos if you go from 1 to 9999. And so leaving it in continuous is a good way to help prevent accidentally overwriting photos when you move your raw files to your computer. Language, set to English, but there are a few different choices here. German, French, and it's got to be Japanese that you can choose from. So older cameras, not that many languages to choose from. Video mode, NTSC or PAL. But wait, we said in the very beginning of the very first video, this camera can't do video. That's right, but it has an analog out port. If you're in North America or an NTSC region, select NTSC. If you're in a PAL region, select PAL. This only applies if you have a 2.5 millimeter analog video jack cable that you're plugging into your TV. I don't even know if TVs have those anymore. If you are never going to plug this camera into a TV for slideshow playback, really does not matter what you have selected here. Format will format your memory card. Custom functions we're going to get to last. Custom function default setting. This will allow, if you come in here, this will reset all of the custom functions to their defaults, which we're going to do. And then firmware version 1.0.4. 1.04 is the final version of the firmware. This camera came with it. I did look on Canon's website and I could not find anywhere that they still host the firmware for this camera. So if you don't have 1.04, you may well be out of luck. Never, for any reason, download firmware from a site that is not the maker of the camera you own. You have no way of knowing if that software has been tampered with or what it's going to do to your computer. Only ever download firmware from the camera maker. So if Canon no longer hosts this, which I believe to be the case as I record this, then you are probably just out of luck on the firmware. So we're going to come back here now to the custom functions, and we're going to go through all of the custom functions on this camera. And as you can see, it starts at custom function 2 and goes up to 15. So to navigate, we just use the rear command wheel as we have been, and we can select different custom functions. Hit the set button and we can come in here to make a change, okay? Menu button to back out, or set button if we've selected it. Anyway, custom function 2. Well, custom function 1. This camera does not have custom function 1. Custom functions start at number 2, and that's because it keeps up with the Canon numbering theme. Custom function 1, I think, was available on the 1D and 1DS, but was not available on the lower tier cameras. I don't remember what custom function 1 is, by the way. Custom function 2, shutter button, AE lock button. This has 4 different options, 0, 1, 2, and 3. 0 is AE and AF with the shutter half pressed, and auto exposure lock with the asterisk. So with option number 0, if you half press the shutter, you get auto exposure and auto focusing, okay? But your camera will not lock focus or exposure settings until it takes the photo. If you press the asterisk button with this mode, the camera will lock your exposure settings at that point when you push the asterisk button. Personally, this is, I think, the setting I use with Canon cameras. We'll see. We'll jog my memory as I go through this menu. Option 1 is auto exposure and autofocus with the asterisk button. Auto exposure lock with the shutter half pressed. With this mode, you use the asterisk button to perform autofocus and auto exposure, and then when you half press the shutter button, your exposure settings are locked in for the photo to be taken. So if you're used to using rear button autofocus and exposure, this is the one to go with. Option 2, auto exposure and autofocus with the shutter half pressed, autofocus lock but no auto exposure lock with the asterisk. So with this mode, you have pressed the shutter button, exposures will automatically be calculated, focus will autofocus will kick in. With your asterisk button, when you push that, focus is locked, but exposure will continue to be calculated as the you track your subject. This is really good if you have a subject, say, moving from left to right, but they might be moving through shade, bright, shade, bright, shade, bright. So your exposure will change as they move through different lighting, but your focus can be locked with the asterisk button. Option number 3, auto exposure and autofocus, but no auto exposure lock with the asterisk. With option 3, you get it's auto exposure and autofocus with no auto exposure lock with the asterisk button. So when you press the asterisk button, you get your auto exposure going and your autofocus going, but you will not get auto exposure lock. When you half press the shutter button, you'll continue to get auto exposure, but you don't get auto exposure lock. So all different settings for this. Honestly, I don't know what the ideal use case is for each of these different ones. Basically, the first, second, and third are variations on a theme. The first one is the one that's the most different from those ones. I generally leave this one on 0 because when I'm shooting Canon, because I want the asterisk to be my auto exposure lock. Coincidentally, when I shoot Sony, my auto exposure lock button is the exact same button that's in the same place as the asterisk on the Canon, because I'm just so used to that position being for auto exposure lock. The point of this is to give you different control with the asterisk button and to have it perform in a way that you want it to, in a way that you're comfortable with. So if this is all like new to you, select the different options here, see what they do in different settings and play around with it. But in general, the reason 0 is default is because that's what most people are looking for in terms of asterisk button use and functionality. Going to go here to custom function number 3. This is mirror lockup shooting. And with this, you have disable or enable. Okay, disable, the camera's going to work exactly as we've seen throughout. You press the shutter button, it takes a photo. Enable, you press the shutter button, the mirror pops up, you press the shutter button again, it takes the photo. So enable is really useful if you're doing something like a waterfall. You can the mirror will lock up, any related camera shake will work its way out of your camera and your tripod, and you can take your photo of your waterfall with no camera shake. This is also really good for microscopy, macro work, star trails, things like that, because whenever the mirror activates and slaps the top of the camera, there is a little bit of shake introduced. So if you want to get that out of your tripod-based photos, you want to use mirror lockup. The other thing you can do with this is combine it with self-timer. And so that after you do your mirror lockup, then you use the self-timer, counts down for 10 seconds, and then you can make sure that there's no shutter shake from pressing no camera shake rather, from pressing the shutter button when the photo's taken. So there's a really useful use there to prevent your camera from having any image shake in your photos that take a lot of time to set up. But for just normal shooting, set it to disable. Custom function number 4 is going to be your exposure value setting. And this is going to be a half stop or a third stop. And this is simply a matter of how much scrolling do you want to do through aperture and shutter speed settings when you're selecting a setting. And basically, if you have a 1/125th of a second shutter speed and a 1/250th of a second, a 1/2 stop set increment is 1/180th in the middle. A 1/1/3 stop would be 1/125th to 1/160th to 1/200th to 1/250th. So you get more precise exposure control with third stop settings, but more scrolling. This is a matter of personal preference and how you want your camera to behave. Okay, so custom function number 5 is your autofocus assist beam from a flash unit. Okay, basically you have options here that will allow your flash to work as an autofocus assist beam. There are times you want to use that. If you have a flash and you are doing a studio photo shoot, maybe it would be a good one. If you're at your kid's play, no, you don't want to do this. You want to disable it. But basically, 0 is emits and fires. Your flash will emit a strobe of light for autofocus assist, or the light will turn on for autofocus assist, and the flash will fire to illuminate your subject. Option 1 is your flash does not emit, but does not emit and does not fire. So there will be no autofocus assist and the flash will not fire. Next one is only external flash emits and fires. Basically, your on-camera flash will not emit an autofocus assist light and it will not fire. But if you have an external flash, it will. Option number 3 is emits. Option number 1, I goofed on this. Does not emit, but will fire the flash. So no autofocus assist from your flash. Flash will still fire. Function number 3 is emits, but does not fire. So your autofocus light will emit, but your flash won't fire. And then we're back to 0. So this is emits and fires. It's a matter of personal preference with what kind of setting you're shooting your photos in and what kind of flash you're using. Custom function number 6 is your flash shutter speed in AV mode. This only applies for aperture priority mode. If you don't shoot in aperture priority mode, then this doesn't matter to you at all. But your choices are auto and 1/200th fixed. In aperture priority mode, if you, let's say you're shooting in a dark party, okay, lights are low, you're going to be using your flash. If you have this setting set, your shutter speed will always be 1/200th when the flash fires. And that can be really good for freezing motion and might give you enough illumination. But if this party is really dark and you're finding out that you're not getting good illumination beyond a handful of feet in front of the camera, you might want to go with auto. This will give you a longer shutter speed, maybe a 60th, maybe a half second. It'll still fire the flash, but you'll have a longer shutter speed to illuminate darker areas of the room. This will not be quite as good at freezing motion in that specific setting, but it will be good at giving you a proper exposure when you use a flash in AV mode. So this is a matter of personal preference and how you use a flash when you're shooting in AV mode, and that's that. Custom function number 7 is your auto exposure bracketing sequence, okay? And you have option 0, which is proper, under, over. That minus sign under the damage there means under. And enable. Enable and disable have to do with this wheel right here, and whether you enable auto exposure bracketing with the use of this wheel or disable it, meaning that this wheel cannot be used to automatically adjust bracketing. With enable, just adjust this wheel and you get exposure bracketing. With disable, you have to go into your menu that we saw at the very beginning in the shooting menu and select bracketing, and then you can bracket that way. So this is if you use bracketing often, you'll probably want to select an option with enable. If you never use bracketing or rarely, disable will be just fine. Option 0 is proper, under, over. So option 0 is proper, under, over exposure. So your correct exposure, dark exposure, bright exposure, and your wheel can activate exposure bracketing. Option 1 is the exact same thing, but the wheel cannot activate exposure bracketing. Option 2 is darker exposure, proper, over. The wheel can start exposure bracketing. Option 3 is under, proper, over. The wheel cannot start exposure bracketing. So this comes down to how you want your bracketed photos to appear on your camera roll when you look at your photos, and whether or not you want the wheel to allow exposure bracketing. Custom function number 8 is your flash curtain sync. Okay, so we have two options, first and second curtain. That's it. So what does this mean? If you remember from when we talked about the flash in the first video, I think I said this. Anyway, the way that a flash works, would have been the second video. Anyway, the way that a flash works is at 1/200th of a second, this camera's flash sync speed, the first curtain opens. At this point, when the curtain reaches the far side of the sensor, the flash will fire, and then the entire sensor is exposed to light for about 1/200th of a second, and then the second curtain closes, and then they reset, okay? And that's first curtain sync. In second curtain sync, the shutter curtain opens, the entire sensor is exposed to light for about 1/200th of a second. The flash fires, and as soon as it fires, the second curtain closes. At 1/200th of a second, these options make no difference whatsoever. 10 seconds in bulb mode, they make a huge difference, because in a long exposure, let's say you're using bulb, in first curtain mode, if you use bulb, you start the exposure, the flash fires at the beginning of it, you hold the shutter open for 10 or 20 seconds, and then it ends. In second curtain, you start the exposure, the shutter curtain opens, the 10 or 20 second exposure goes, you let go of the shutter release button, the flash then fires, and then the second curtain closes and the exposure ends. Well, let's say that you're taking a picture of your friend riding their bike through the scene, okay? And they're riding and they have a bunch of lights on their bike's wheels. As they ride, those lights are going to spiral through the scene, okay? In first curtain mode, the flash fires at the beginning of the shutter, at the beginning of the exposure, your friend's over here, and then it stops. Your friend is well illuminated. The lights keep being recorded as the exposure continues. And so the image is your friend over here on their bike, well illuminated with a bunch of lights shooting off in front of them. In second curtain mode, the lights will be recorded as the exposure starts. When the exposure finishes, the flash will fire, your friend will be illuminated, and it will look like the lights are trailing off of them. So that's the difference in the curtains there, and one specific use case. This is a matter of the type of image you want to create with your flash image and how long your shutter speed is going to be, which one you want to select for that. Custom function number 9 is your lens autofocus stop. This only applies for lenses that have an autofocus stop button on them. Most of the lenses don't. So if you don't have any lenses with that autofocus stop button, this is not the AF/MF switch on EF lenses. This is a specific autofocus stop button. If you don't own any lenses with that button, this custom function doesn't do anything for you at all. But your choices are autofocus stop, autofocus start, lens, and auto exposure lock. Okay, so those are your 3 options. Like this, honestly, this is one of the best menus for this functionality in any of the Canon cameras because it's really simple. Okay, with option 0, if autofocus is going, whether you have to press the shutter or have to press the asterisk button, however you want the camera to behave, when you press that autofocus stop button on the lens, autofocus will stop. So this is really useful. Let's say you're tracking sports, okay? You're tracking a rally car and it's driving along here, but you know that there's going to be like a tree. And when you come up to that tree, if you don't stop the autofocus, then your camera is going to lock onto that tree and it's going to throw off your next couple of images. So you're tracking the rally car, taking photos as it comes. The tree is about here. You hit the autofocus stop button, autofocus will stop. You let the tree pass, you release the autofocus stop button and autofocus will commence again. But through that time, as you pass that tree, you'll continue burst mode shooting and tracking your subject as it moves, and your autofocus won't be thrown off by that tree. With option 1, autofocus is started when you push that button, meaning that that lens button is what starts autofocus action for your camera. Option number 2 is your auto exposure lock while metering. So basically, when metering is active, if you press that button on your lens, your exposure settings will be locked in while you hold that button. So basically, that turns that lens button into AEL. So this is all a matter of personal preference and how you want your lens to behave if you have a lens with that button. Custom function number 10 is your autofill flash reduction. Okay, so your options here are enable and disable. With enable, when you use this, enabling your autofill flash reduction creates natural looking light in daylight. So if you're doing daylight shooting with a flash to eliminate harsh shadows from your subjects, like you're doing a bikini photo shoot at a beach or something like that, you would want to enable this so that you can have more even lighting on your subjects from your flash. Disable prevents underexposure of subjects with strong backlight. So if you are doing a photo shoot where you have a subject standing in front of a light, either the sun or a bright studio light, something like that, and you're trying to get like a contre-jour type photo, you would want to potentially set this to disable, because if you enable it, you would end up with a silhouette. With disable, you'll get stronger light coming out of your flash during bright light flash use. So this is just a matter of personal preference, what you're trying to accomplish with your photo and what type of setting you're using to take your photo. If you're not using fill flash, this isn't going to do a whole lot for you. Custom function number 11 is your menu button return. Okay, so you have top, previous, top if power off, previous, and top, so back to top. So your options here, with this, anytime you hit the menu button, it will always take you to the top of the menus. Whether you were just in the menu system, regardless, you will always go to the top. Previous, top if powered off. When you hit the menu button, if you have not turned off your camera, it will take you back to the previous menu location that you were just at. If you do power off your camera, it will then take you back to the top next time you select menu after you turn your camera back on. Previous, whether or not you turn off your camera, you will always go back to where you were in the menu. So let's say you have a menu item you are often using. You might want to set this to previous, so every time you hit menu, you go to that menu option, and then you can just access it very quickly. This is a matter of personal preference, though, and how you want your menu button to behave. Custom function number 12 is your set button function. Disable, default is no function. If you push the set button, does it do anything? So we talked earlier about the set button having the LCD illumination button, or the LCD illumination function. I believe this has to be disabled for that to work. Your next option is check quality. or change quality. This allows you to push the set button to change the image quality that you're using between different sizes of JPEGs or RAW if you want to do that. This one is change ISO speed. You can push the set button to pull up your ISO selection and adjust it that way, which is useful, by the way, because there is no ISO button, direct ISO access via a button on this camera. Function 3 is change parameters. Remember when we saw those sets earlier that you could adjust the different sets of images to create different contrast, sharpness, saturation profiles? This allows you to push the set button, and then you can use the rear command wheel to scroll through those 3 things that you set up and select one. And then we're back to 0. This is completely a matter of personal preference, how you use your camera, what you want the set button to do, how you select this option. Custom function number 13 is your sensor cleaning mirror up. For this, you need the AC power adapter. Okay, this will not work or should not work unless you have AC power. If you select enable, it will lock up the mirror, open up the shutter, and then you can access the sensor to clean it with a bulb blower or a brush. Or if you don't have enough power, it will just, that's curious. Okay, so custom function 13 allows you to clean your camera sensor if you are connected to the AC adapter. Custom function 14 is superimposed display. What this does is allow you to on or off, which is enable or disable. Honestly, some of these old menus used inconsistent terminology throughout, a little bit frustrating, but on or off. This allows you to enable or disable your autofocus point flashing red in the viewfinder. So in the viewfinder up here, there are 3 autofocus points marked on the focusing screen. With on, the autofocus point that's in use will flash red. With off, it won't. This is simply a matter of how you want your camera to communicate with you and the kind of information you're looking for. And our last custom function, 15, is release without CF card. So with this, you can 0, release without CF card. The camera will pretend to take a photo if there's no CF card in the camera, or not release. The camera will not pretend to take a photo without a CF card. This is a really good way to double check really quickly. Pick up your camera. Do I have a CF card? I don't want to open the door. Let me just pretend to take a photo. If this is set to not release and the camera doesn't take a photo, grab a CF card. This is basically just a matter of how you want your camera to perform when you're using it. I always set this to 0 because, making these videos, it's kind of neat to hear the shutter curtain going every now and then. Anyway, and that's it for the custom functions. That's it for everything in the menu button, and that is the entirety of the Canon D60 video manual series. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in whatever comes next.